All right, strap yourselves in for this one because we're diving deep into a world that's both spooky and surprisingly
It
complex.
is.
And it all revolves around this figure, the Klabauterman.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you guys sent in some truly fascinating stuff, descriptions of this mischievous ship spirit,
Yes,
right alongside lyrics from a German hip-hop group, Doza Crew, who've kind of given this whole legend a modern twist.
they have.
It's like ancient maritime folklore meets modern hip-hop storytelling, and I gotta say, I'm really excited to see where this deep dive takes us.
It's a fascinating blend, isn't it? Ancient folklore slamming into modern hip hop.
It's not your everyday combo,
Hmm.
but before we get swept away by all the shadowy cityscapes and digital escapes that Doza Crew throws at us,
Right.
let's make sure we're all on the same page. What exactly this Klabauterman we're dealing with here?
So the Klabauterman is, at his core, a ship spirit. You could even call him a kobold who calls the vessel home. Picture a mischievous little guy, often invisible, who might play pranks on the crew one minute and then warn the captain of an approaching storm the next.
Okay, so a mix of helpful and havoc wreaking.
Mm.
Makes him pretty unpredictable and honestly kind of intriguing. But his name, it's more than just ship spirit, right?
Exactly. The name itself, it's believed to come from Low German words like rumble, noisy, even cock. So
Wow.
you can almost picture him making a ruckus down there in the ship's hull, maybe even patching up leaks when no one's looking.
I can practically hear the creaking and groaning of those old wooden ships. Okay, but let's get to the heart of our deep dive here, which is Doza Crew. From what I've seen, they're not exactly sticking to that traditional image of the Klabauterman. They're really playing with this myth in some seriously wild ways.
They are.
Yeah.
They really are. They use the name in a few different variations, too. Klabauterman, Klabauterman.
Oh, interesting.
It's like they're riffing on the original legend, making it their own. And what's really striking is how they use the Klabauterman as a guide through all these different stories they're telling. And not just on the high seas either. They drop him into some seriously unexpected situations.
Like in Klabautergarn, where he's not on some creaky ship, but navigating a bustling city, almost like he's this urban explorer, totally attuned to the rhythm of the streets. I'm curious, what do you make of that shift from the vast open ocean to the concrete jungle?
I think it's brilliant. They've taken this ancient figure and made him relevant to modern life. He's not battling storms anymore. He's dealing with the unique challenges of the urban landscape, you know? The noise, the anonymity, the feeling of being lost in the crowd.
Yeah, it's like he traded his sea legs for some serious street smarts.
Yeah.
But it's not just about dropping him into a new setting. Doza Crew actually gives him some pretty epic adversaries to face, too.
Oh, you're talking about Pak Schleipzig, right? That epic rap battle where the Sandman, who, by the way, they pulled straight from T.S. Eliot's poem, goes head-to-head with Krampus.
That's the one. It's wild. You've got the Sandman, a figure who's traditionally associated with, dreams and slumber,
Right.
suddenly transformed into this force of dark magic. And then there's Krampus, who's basically ripped straight from nightmare fuel.
Right.
What a combo. And then out of nowhere, the Klabauterman jumps into the fray to fight Krampus. It's such an unexpected twist. Why do you think Doza Crew throws him into this mythical brawl? What's going on there?
It's a great question, and I think that's where things get really interesting. It could be that they're positioning the Klabauterman as a protector, a force that actively stands up to figures of control and punishment, like Krampus. Maybe he's not just a trickster, but a defender of, say, those who are vulnerable or marginalized.
So there's more to him than mischief and pranks. He's got a sense of justice, maybe even a rebellious streak against figures of authority.
Interesting. But it's not all epic battles and, mythical showdowns, right?
Doza Crew also takes the Klabauterman into the world of technology, like in Mainframe Revolution.
Yes. In Mainframe Revolution, they basically reimagine him as this digital navigator, a master of code who can just slip through firewalls and security systems like it's nothing.
Right.
It's as if they're saying those old ways of trickery and cunning, they're just as relevant in the digital age as they were on the high seas.
Okay, my head is spinning a bit. We've got a ship spirit turned urban explorer turned mythical warrior turned digital hacker. That's quite the resume.
It is, and we're just getting started. What we've seen so far is just the tip of the iceberg, really.
Speaking of icebergs, Doza Crew definitely doesn't shy away from showing the darker, colder side of the Klabauterman's world either. Specifically, I'm thinking of Klabautergarn and Verborgine Melody, where there's this haunting, almost melancholic atmosphere. It's definitely a far cry from those playful pranks we were talking about earlier.
Oh, absolutely. And it actually aligns with some of the more traditional depictions of the Klabauterman. You see, he wasn't always seen as a benevolent figure. In some stories, his presence actually signaled misfortune. It could even foreshadow the sinking of a ship.
Whoa, talk about a mood swing.
Yeah.
So he's not just a mischievous spirit, but potentially a harbinger of doom. That's a pretty heavy burden for one little guy to carry.
It is. And Dozakru doesn't shy away from exploring that burden either. There's this really interesting moment in Klabautergarn where the Klabauterman describes himself as being on the run, pursued by his master, and makes you wonder, is he running from his past? From his own darker impulses? Maybe even from the very fate he represents?
That's a great question. It's almost like Doza Crew is giving us a glimpse into the Klabauterman's internal struggle, showing us that he's more than just a mischievous spirit. He's this complex character with his own secrets and vulnerability.
Absolutely.
And that complexity is what makes him so fascinating. He's like a mirror to our own anxieties, our own desires to break free from, the things that hold us back, whether they're external forces or our own internal demons.
Exactly.
So we're not just dealing with a playful ship spirit anymore, are we? Doza Crew has taken this ancient myth and turned it into something much deeper, much more human.
Yeah.
They've given us a character who's both relatable and a little bit terrifying, someone who really embodies the contradictions and complexities of, well, life in the digital age.
Exactly. And that's what makes this deep dive so compelling, wouldn't you say? I mean, we're not just exploring folklore here. We're delving into the human psyche, into the hidden depths of our own desires and fears.
Before we get too lost in those depths,
Right.
there's another figure from Doza Crew's musical world that we need to talk about. The Sandman. You mentioned him earlier in the context of that epic rap battle, but he seems to have a much darker presence in their music than the, traditional lullaby singing Sandman we might be familiar with.
Absolutely. Doza Cruz Sandman. He's a figure who embodies that darker side of dreams, the nightmares that lurk beneath the surface of our subconscious. He's not here to bring peaceful slumber. He's here to confront us with our deepest fears and anxieties.
And he does it in a pretty terrifying way. I'm thinking specifically of the song Sandman, where he's described as abducting children, leaving sand in their eyes, and causing hearts to bleed. It's a far cry from the gentle figure of bedtime stories.
It is. It's a much darker interpretation.
Right. So they've taken a familiar, maybe even comforting figure and twisted it into something truly unsettling. But what I find interesting is the connection you can draw between the Sandman and the Klabauterman, even though they seem so different on the surface.
You're right. They both represent something that exists on the fringes of reality, something that blurs the line between the familiar and the uncanny. They both have the potential to be both comforting and terrifying, depending on how you interpret them.
Yeah.
And both of them seem to be tied to this idea of fate, of a power that's ultimately beyond our control.
It's almost like they're both agents of destiny, playing with our perceptions of reality and leading us down paths we might not have chosen for ourselves. And that's a pretty heady concept, especially when you're listening to it all through the lens of hip-hop.
It is. Doza Crew isn't just making music, They're creating a whole mythology, a universe where these ancient figures collide with modern anxieties. And the lines between reality, dreams, and the digital world become, well, increasingly blurred.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here in part one. We've met the Klabauterman,
Right.
explored his traditional roots, and seen how Doza Crew has reimagined him. He's an urban explorer, a mythical warrior, a digital navigator, and even a figure wrestling with his own inner demons. And then we've got the Sandman, a figure of both dreams and nightmares, who seems to be connected to the Klabauterman in some fascinating ways. But where do we go from here? What other secrets and insights are hidden within Doza Crew's musical world? That's what we'll be exploring in part two of our deep dive.
I can't wait. Welcome back to our deep dive into Doza Crew's musical mythology. It's amazing how they weave together these ancient figures like the Klabauterman and the Sandman with these, very contemporary themes.
It's true. It's not just about revisiting old folklore. They're tapping into something that feels really relevant to our lives today, especially in the digital age. They're exploring the urban experience, the anxieties of technology, even that feeling of isolation that can come with being constantly connected but somehow disconnected at the same time.
And they do it so well, don't they? Take Das Ritual, for example. They create this really vivid picture of dancing through the city at night, feeling the energy of the streets, almost like a ritualistic experience,
Yeah.
But then they hint at something darker lurking beneath the surface.
Right, there's that line, Die Dunkelheit umhüllt den Raum, Raum still in seinen Augen ein böser Traum. Traumwild. It always gives me chills. It suggests that even in the midst of all this urban energy, there's this sense of unease, a feeling that something sinister is watching.
Exactly. It's like they're saying that even in our modern, technologically advanced world, we're still surrounded by these ancient forces, these primal instincts that we can't escape.
Right.
And those forces, they can be both alluring and dangerous at the same time.
Yeah, totally. And it's not just about the darkness itself. It's about how we navigate it,
Yeah.
how we try to make sense of it. And I think that's where the Klabauterman comes in. He's not just a trickster, he's also a guide, someone who knows how to move through these shadowy realms.
Exactly. He's a guide. And in Mainframe Revolution, they take that idea of guidance and apply it to the digital world. The Klabauterman becomes this hacker, a master of code who can slip through firewalls and expose the hidden mechanisms of power. He's still a trickster, but now his playground is the digital landscape.
It's like they're suggesting that those skills and instincts that allowed the Klabauterman to survive on the high seas, they're now essential for navigating the complexities of the internet.
Absolutely.
He's become a symbol of, like, digital resilience, a reminder that we need to be just as resourceful and adaptable online as we are in the physical world.
And that adaptability is so crucial, isn't it? Because the digital world is constantly evolving, and with it, the challenges we face. Doza Crew doesn't shy away from showing the darker side of technology, either, potential for manipulation, surveillance, and control. But they also seem to be suggesting that we can use those same tools to fight back, to reclaim our agency, to create our own spaces of freedom and expression.
So it's not about demonizing technology, it's about understanding its power and learning how to wield it for our own purposes. It's like they're saying, hey, the digital world is a wild and unpredictable place, but we can't just hide from it. We have to engage with it, to shape it, to make it our own.
And that engagement can be both exhilarating and terrifying, can't it? It's like stepping onto a ship that could either sail you to new horizons or sink beneath the waves. And who better to guide us through those treacherous waters than the Klabauterman?
Okay, yeah, I'm starting to see the connection here. The Klabauterman isn't just a character in Doza Cruz's music. He's a metaphor for how we navigate the world, both online and offline. He represents our own inner trickster, that part of us that's willing to bend the rules, to challenge authority, to find creative solutions to seemingly impossible problems.
Exactly. He embodies that spirit of resourcefulness and adaptability that we all need to cultivate to thrive in this complex, ever-changing world.
But he's also a figure who's struggling with his own demons, isn't he? There's that line in Klabautergarn where he describes himself as a slave to his master. Makes you wonder what forces are holding him back. Is it his past, his own darker impulses, maybe even the very fate he represents?
That's a question that I think we all grapple with on some level. What are the forces that shape our lives, that limit our choices, that make us feel trapped? Are they external forces, like societal pressures or economic constraints? Or are they internal forces, like fear, doubt, or self-sabotage?
I think that's what makes Doza Cruz music so relatable. They're not just telling stories about mythical creatures and digital landscapes. They're exploring these universal human experiences. The feeling of being trapped, the desire for freedom, the struggle to find our place in the world.
Absolutely. And they're doing it with such raw honesty and emotional depth. They're not afraid to show the vulnerability, the sadness, the longing that lies beneath the surface of our lives.
You can really hear that in Verborgen Melody. It's one of their more melancholic tracks, and it really captures that feeling of isolation, of being lost in a world that's both beautiful and terrifying. There's a line that always gets to me. Ein kalter Wind weht durch die Straßen, der Klabautermann weint leis. It's such a poignant image, and it just speaks to that deep-seated yearning for connection, for belonging that we all carry within us.
That image of the Klabauterman weeping, it's so powerful, isn't it?
It is.
It reminds us that even those who seem carefree and rebellious are often carrying their own burdens, fighting their own battles. And it invites us to look beyond the surface, to see the humanity in everyone, even those who seem different from us.
I'm starting to realize that Doza Crew isn't just telling stories. They're creating a space for reflection, for empathy, for connection. They're inviting us to confront our own shadows, to acknowledge our own vulnerabilities, and to find solace in the shared human experience.
And they're doing it through the power of music, which is, such a universal language. Music has this incredible ability to transcend boundaries, to connect us on an emotional level, to make us feel seen and heard. And Doza Crew is using that power to create something truly special, something that speaks to the heart of what it means to be human in the digital age.
So as we delve deeper into Doza Cruz's world, we're not just exploring the mythology of the Klabauterman, we're exploring the mythology of ourselves. We're discovering the hidden depths of our own desires, fears, and aspirations.
And that exploration, it can be both challenging and incredibly rewarding. It's like setting sail on an uncharted sea. You know there will be storms along the way, but you also trust that there will be moments of breathtaking beauty, of profound insight, of connection with something greater than yourself.
And who knows? Maybe we'll even find a few treasures buried beneath the waves. But that's the journey we'll have to continue in part 3 of our deep dive. All right, welcome back to our final deep dive into Doza Cruz's musical world. We've explored the Klabauterman's transformation from, that mischievous ship spirit to a figure who navigates all the complexities of modern life, the urban landscape, the digital age. We even met that shadowy Sandman who really messes with our perception of reality and dreams. But before we wrap things up, I'm really curious to dig into something we touched on earlier, the idea of technology as a kind of magic in their music.
It's an interesting angle, isn't it? Doza Crew definitely seems to suggest that technology, especially the internet, has become this space where the lines between the real and virtual, the possible and the impossible, become incredibly blurry. It's like they're saying the internet itself is a kind of folklore, a new mythology being written entirely in code.
I love that the internet as folklore. And within that folklore, the Klabauterman, he's not just surviving, he's thriving. Like in Klabautergarn, they describe him moving through firewalls, manipulating data, almost like he's become this digital trickster god.
It's a really clever reimagining of his traditional role, isn't it? He's still a trickster, still exploiting weaknesses, finding those hidden paths, but now his playground is the digital realm. Think about it, the skills that made the Klabauterman a legend on the high seas, that cunning, that resourcefulness, the ability to always stay one step ahead, those are the exact skills you need to navigate the complexities of the internet.
Right. So it's not just a surface level connection they're making between an old myth and new technology. It feels like they're suggesting a much deeper parallel, a way of understanding the challenges and opportunities of the digital age, but through the lens of folklore.
Exactly. And it really makes you wonder, if the Klabauterman is a metaphor for how we navigate the internet, what does that say about us? Are we all tricksters, in a sense?
Mm.
Always trying to find ways to get around the rules, to access information, to create our own paths?
Ooh, that's a really thought-provoking question, especially when you consider all the ethical dilemmas of, say, online anonymity, or the power dynamics you see within online communities, the way the lines blur between reality and virtual identity. I don't think Doza Crew is offering any easy answers here, but they're definitely pushing us to think critically about our relationship with technology.
They are, and I think that's one of the things that makes their music so compelling. They're not just entertainers, they're cultural commentators, using their art to explore the complexities of modern life in a way that makes you think, and it's also engaging.
They definitely aren't afraid to ask the tough questions, but they're also having fun with it, aren't they? There's this playfulness, this sense of humor that prevents their music from ever feeling too heavy or preachy.
Absolutely. And I think that humor is so essential. It allows us to approach these complex, sometimes uncomfortable topics with a sense of curiosity and wonder rather than fear or judgment. It's like Doza Crew is saying, hey, the world is a crazy place, especially online, but instead of getting bogged down by all the negativity, let's just embrace the absurdity, the unexpected, the sheer joy of exploring something new.
It's like they're not just commentators, they're guides, leading us through this digital wilderness with a sense of adventure and a bit of twinkle in their eye. Speaking of guides, there's one line in Klabautergarn that I keep coming back to. It's where the Klabautermann says, "Ich bin ein Sklave meines Meisters." I am a slave to my master. Which seems to kind of contradict that whole image of him as this free-spirited trickster who can bend the rules of reality.
That line is really interesting, isn't it? It suggests there's this tension, this struggle, beneath the surface of his seemingly carefree existence. If we think about it in the context of the digital world, maybe it's a commentary on how seductive technology can be. We think we're in control, but are we actually becoming slaves to our devices? To that constant flow of information, to the algorithms that shape our online experiences?
It's not just about the external forces that try to control us then, but also the internal ones, those desires and compulsions that can trap us in a cycle of endless scrolling and mindless consumption.
Absolutely. And that's a theme that Doza Crew keeps revisiting in their music, this idea that true freedom isn't just about breaking free from those external constraints, but also from the internal forces that hold us back.
It's a powerful reminder that true freedom requires a certain level of self-awareness, a willingness to face our own shadows, and a real commitment to making conscious choices about how we engage with the world around us, both online and offline.
And the Klabauterman, with all his contradictions and complexities, maybe he can guide us along that path. He's a reminder that we all have that trickster within us, that mischievous spirit that can help us find those creative solutions, challenge the status quo, and ultimately break free from the things that hold us back.
But he's also a reminder that true freedom requires more than just trickery and rebellion, right?
It does.
It needs that self-awareness, a willingness to confront our own, demons, and a commitment to using our power for good.
You got it. It's a journey that's both challenging and incredibly rewarding. And I think Doza Crew is inviting us all to embark on that journey with them.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one takeaway you hope our listeners will walk away with?
More than anything, I want them to remember that Doza Crew's music isn't just about entertainment. It's about engagement. It's about asking questions. It's about challenging assumptions. It's about using the power of art to explore the complexities of our world and connect with something deeper, something bigger than ourselves.
And maybe even to spark a little mischief and magic along the way. So to our listener, we encourage you. Dive into Doza Crew's music, explore the world they've created, and see what treasures you uncover. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep the music playing.